What is up, everybody? Welcome back. It is your favorite director's favorite director, and in the famous words of Alison De Laurentiis. Did you miss me? Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. We're going to start off with how are you doing? How are you feeling? How is your mental health? I hope you're finding peace in this crazy, crazy world, especially right now. We are going to start a little journey today, and that journey is going to be the Erik Tells All doc journey. This has been both requested by some of you. This has been something that has piqued my interest. There have been clips from this put into the new documentary. And I am more excited to watch it, mostly because it is coming directly from, hopefully at least, if they did it right, it'll be Erik involved with the project. And that's what I care about. Any project that doesn't have the involvement of the victims or the suspects in this situation, it can get a little bit murky, as we've seen with monsters. So with that being said, I'm excited to kind of hear this little limited series perspective from Erik. And yeah, that's everything I had to say about that. With that being said, I did watch Time Cut. That was on Netflix. It was just came out on Netflix. So if you have not seen that, go check that out. It's somewhere over there on my page. Definitely on my Patreon. If you did not know already, all of my trial reactions, opening statements, witness testimonies, Erik and Lyle on the stand, closing arguments, all of those are going to be over on my Patreon uncut. And I'm doing that specifically so that you guys can get all of it. If you're asking me to watch it, I'm going to watch 6 to 7 hours of one person's testimony. I'm going to give you all 6 to 7 hours of their testimony. There's no reason not to. So with that being said, you can go check that out over my Patreon at some point. The opening statements will be released shortly over there on Patreon, and you can go check those out or my reaction to them. With that being said, I don't think I have anything else to say to you guys. You guys know the drill. If you want to see me on anything other than Patreon and YouTube, just follow me at I Am the Spiritual Director. If not, that's also okay, of course. Other than that, if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, you know the drill. Pull up a seat, lay in bed, grab some snacks, and let's watch it.
I've heard many different versions of my life told in the media.
I've heard of very few murders that were more savage.
Violent things don't happen in Beverly Hills.
The only one that I've ever met that I would say, well, gee, what a surprise. It's not a surprise.
Who's this guy? I like him. Didn't even see his name.
He's the only one that I've ever met.
Dan Starr. Not a surprise. I do want to say a couple of things as only I could pause 2.5 minutes in. The first one being, notice the verbiage that I don't know if that was the chief of police was using in that press conference. Savage. And also I want you to notice where the events occurred. Beverly Hills, correct? So if we're already kind of in a place in time where murders don't happen, violent crime doesn't happen, that also adds to why they did what they did. It's such an important factor in this case. Violent crimes don't happen in Beverly Hills. That's not normal. And there are plenty of rich kids in Beverly Hills who have parents who probably are giving them money in the will that don't kill their parents. Plenty. And it's funny because as I'm talking out loud, that is the exception to the rule, isn't it? Like I don't know if that was what I wanted to say, but that is the exception to like what everybody is saying. You know what I'm saying? Everybody keeps going, it was Beverly Hills, it was a quiet neighborhood, or there are plenty of abuse victims who don't kill their parents. There are plenty of wealthy kids with wealthy parents who don't kill their parents. Exactly. You're right. So if the 1% does in fact kill their parents, we shouldn't be questioning if they did it or how they did it or why was it for the money. No, I'm questioning, why the hell did you kill your parents? You were already set up to inherit everything. Whether or not Jose was actually going to remove them from the will, I doubt. But let's just say for the sake of everybody's theory that they did it for money, even if which I can't even say that because they bought him a condo right before they got killed. So no. Yeah, this just comes back down to, why would two wealthy kids with wealthy parents who are going to inherit everything anyways kill their parents?
Because we were afraid.
The Menendez brothers.
Oh, I thought they were going to kill us.
They put on the airs.
Hi, Diane.
I thought the testimony was compelling. Just as watching Laurence Olivier act is very compelling as well.
Do I even have to say anything about Pam? No, deadass. Do I have to say anything about her? I literally cannot stand her. I can't stand her. She always does this, where she's like, what I don't like about her as a prosecutor, I guess prosecution in this sense, she makes me tired, can you tell? What I don't like about the prosecutors in this sense is that the truth didn't matter. Whether they were sexually abused or not did not matter to the prosecution, and that I don't like. Because if it did matter, they could have just pled out, and they didn't do that. So I don't like the fact that, like, she's like, yeah, sure is compelling, just like watching an actor is compelling. Sis, if you really sat there and watched those testimonies and you honestly believe that they were lying, you've got to go figure that out, and you've got to go get that brain checked, because something is wrong if you can't show empathy, babes. That kind of makes you a sociopath.
That's all
did he say he did?
The act is very compelling as well.
We view the abuse excuse as it's a bullshit offense.
Interesting. Men.
It was an American drama.
I'm just realizing I had to deal with the men.
My mom was there and my dad was there. I was really glad to see my brother.
Aww.
Was explaining to me that I would be living at home several nights a week. That even though I had a dorm, all the freshmen had to live in a dorm, but really I'd be living at home.
And pay attention, all freshmen had to live in a dorm. Like that was what UCLA was saying at that time. All freshmen have to live in a dorm, and his dad is saying, no, you'll be staying at the house however many days out of the week, which just kind of tells you and we knew this based off of when Lyle got caught cheating and got suspended for a year, that he will just strong arm anybody in his way. He will not let anybody come between him and the abuse of his son. And that, to me, is the most vile and disgusting thing somebody can do. And not because you're concerned about his safety, not because you want him to be at the best school, not because you want him to be safe at home, because you want to abuse him. It doesn't even feel real.
And said, no, you aren't. She started taking my clothes from the bag and throwing them out. He said, you better be here when I get back to my trip.
This is what I mean by Kitty was just as bad. And here's what I don't, oh my God, how in denial you have to be to help your husband keep your son, who should be going away to college, to keep him home so your husband can sexually abuse him even more, is so wild to me. I will never understand that way of thinking. I will never understand that process of thinking. I will not understand that. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then what do? You go snitch. Eric's upstairs and he's gonna run away, he said. you go snitch to keep him there. Could not be this day and age.
I said, Lyle, it's still happening. Saying, how could I let that happen? Did I enjoy it? Why didn't I do
The amount of...
it? I was crying, and I started to have like a small panic attack.
The amount of guilt. It was just guilt that Lyle was feeling.
I just told him that, Dad's not going to be happy that I'm telling you. But it was my only hope.
It's also interesting that Jose was so against Lyle knowing. And I only say that because there wasn't, I guess, God, he was just such a good manipulator, and that was the problem here, wasn't it? Because because with Erik, he would say, and he said the same thing to Lyle, if anybody finds out, this has to stop. And then you assume that he's just going to be a dick for the rest of, the time. But if Lyle knew, there was a chance that he didn't have anything to hold over Lyle's head. So Lyle could go to the police. So I guess that's why he wouldn't want Lyle to know. So I guess that's just why he didn't tell him, or he didn't want Lyle to know. But I just think that that's interesting because they're both your kids, and at any point Lyle could have told anybody. At any point Lyle could have told the police. With the first time Lyle found out, he could have told the police. And I think that Lyle, that initial reaction of like, why didn't you tell anybody? Do you like it? What's wrong with you? Why would you let this happen or keep happening? I think that that's just initial guilt of, oh, how did I not know? How could I not see it? If that makes sense. I don't think that was actually how he was feeling.
Dad told them, you're going to go back to Princeton. Eric's going to go to UCLA like planned, and we're going to forget this conversation ever took place.
The delusion.
What have you done? You told Lyle. He said Lyle's going to tell everyone. Oh, I understand a lot more than you think. I know, I've always known. I just screamed, I hate you. I hate you.
To answer Kitty's question, yes, I do think that you're stupid. I think you're stupid because you knew and you didn't say anything. I think that there's just such a gross lack of moral. I think there's a gross lack of love, and there's a gross lack of maternal instinct in Kitty. And that was the driving and deciding factor as to who she was going to be her entire life. Kitty was probably never going to fully accept her children. And so she just was not supposed to be here any longer. And again, I've made this statement before on this channel. I will make this statement again on this channel. I think that what Kitty did was worse because you knew, you aided it, you weren't getting any gratification from it, and you allowed it to keep happening. Through the time that these boys were adults, Erik was an adult, and you allowed this to continue happening. You did not speak up to Jose. I'm not going to sit here and do the battered woman syndrome. I'm not going to sit here and do the Stockholm from Kitty. I'm not going to do the she was depressed or she was an alcoholic. I'm not going to do it. There's no excuse in my book that is ever going to excuse you allowing this to happen. Because listen, I have seen motherhood today. I have seen motherhood in today's world. And moms today, they will smile in the mugshot, babe. Smile in it.
The argument, why didn't they simply leave the house, is a very plausible one and compelling one to the ordinary person, but for the fact they haven't lived the Menendez life and they haven't...
18 and 21 year
okay.
boys are still boys, and...
Okay, we're getting some people on their team.
Their ability to think that they could leave and live independently on their own was slim to none.
So the point that she just made was a good point, and I'm glad this is sparking my brain to come. My brain is turning on. Can you hear the gears? So what she said was they were 18 and 21, but they were never going to be able to be independent because they've never had to be independent. They've never learned it, right? Naturally, when we're growing up, our parents will kind of start to give us more responsibility and allow us to do more things so that by the time we get to 18, we are able to go off and live by ourselves and be independent and do those things. But these boys who are one, they're already in an unstable environment because their parents are arguing. Their mom is an alcoholic. She's suicidal. Dad is just domineering. Even if you take out the sexual abuse, he's abusive. He's physically abusive, and he's mentally abusive and emotionally, right? So they're already set up in that aspect. But then they're not given responsibilities. They're not allowed to leave the house, in the sense of like, Erik not being able to go to college, or Lyle getting into trouble and his dad always bailing him out of it. So they never really had to take responsibility. They never had any independence prior to becoming 18. So by the time they're 18 and 21, even if they were going to run away from the family, how do they do that and be independent? Look at what they did even after, when they got all that money. They're buying cars, they're buying watches, they're buying clothes. They're not buying anything sustainable. It's not like they're buying a house and they're getting food prepped and they're going to work at a job. Like, they're not doing those things because they don't know what it means to be independent. So they could not go off and run away and survive. And again, who's to say Jose wouldn't just find them?
I had not fired a gun, and we told him for self-defense. He said the gun's used for self-defense, and he put it down, and it was a shotgun.
That still proves my theory that everybody kept saying, this is such a heinous crime. It is so savage based off of the shotguns. The planning after the fact, the mafia did it. They shot him in the kneecaps. It was savage, and they were sending a message. Don't be fooled. That did not come before the murders. That came after the fact, when the boys had time to sit and talk it out. And they said, we knew we wouldn't get away with it. We knew we wouldn't. We knew that if we didn't say that it was the mafia, that we would be in prison for the rest of our lives, and we would go to jail for murder, which they did anyways, but that's not the point. And all of that, though, came after the fact. It was not some just gross lack of moral, psychopathic, premeditated killing. That's not what happened, and that is what the prosecution kept trying to make this be, was some premeditated, just vulgar, vicious murder. That's not what happened. Even now, Erik is saying, we went to Big Five and we were trying to buy we were going to buy handguns. Well, then the guy said, well, what's it for? And he said self-defense, just in case. And the guy said, okay, well, then you want a shotgun. So again, it's not premeditated. They didn't go out looking for a shotgun.
The idea of being alone on the ocean with nobody around, I was nervous and paranoid for a good reason.
Everybody knows what's going on with Diddy. Most people, at least, majority of society knows what's going on with Diddy. Majority of society knows that there was that security footage that just came out or recently came out, of him, beating his ex in a hotel hallway, like the elevator place. He paid somebody a lot of money to keep that tape under wraps. Okay? I just want you to remember that. He paid somebody a lot of money to keep that tape under wraps, and that was just abuse. We're talking about Jose Menendez, who has so much money at this point. They easily were well within reason when thinking they could kill us, dump us, and pay this guy to say he never saw anything. That's not outlandish, and that's what's so crazy about the story is the most outlandish thing you can think of, it's not that outlandish anymore, and that's where this gets kind of terrifying and spooky, you know what I mean?
It was a weird vibe just all around.
My mom was upset that there were more people on the boat than...
Got it.
And the boys just sat there. They didn't bother going back to get a towel.
There was no fishing at all that I remember now. I mean, that was the whole reason we were there.
Yeah, that is interesting.
We talked about everything that had been happening, why I had gone through this and not told him. I think Lyle felt really horrible.
Responsible and guilty.
That this was happening
Yeah.
I remember holding the gun, sitting on my bed, waiting to see if he was going to break down the door. I remember this terror.
That's crazy.
It didn't even matter that I was holding this gun. I felt like as soon as Dad broke through that door, I was going to die. But I didn't care, because I was never going to let Dad come in my room and do that again.
Ooh. Oh, the voice crack. Oh, Erik. The voice crack. Oh, God. I think there's so many things, and I don't know if I'll figure this out during the trial. I don't know, but there's so many things that I didn't know, or that we were not privy to. I at least didn't know that he was ready to defend himself. I'm assuming that's the night before. Yeah, I'm assuming, yeah. He was ready to stand up to his dad, that he said, I was not going to let him come into my room and do that again. And it's so heartbreaking that all that happened in this moment was Erik standing up for himself. That's all he was doing. And it's so shitty, because now we can all say that, right? Now we can see that. We applaud the victim who stands up for themselves. But back then, the prosecution, the men, even the guy that was in the beginning of this that said it was a BS theory, you didn't applaud the victim for trying to stand up for themselves. And that is so heartbreaking to me. And I really hope that that's not still a thing. That is so disheartening.
Tension had been building day after day. There's a church there, the Church of Good Shepherd, that I would go sometimes when I was feeling anxious or really depressed, and I needed peace. Looking out at the sunset, and it just felt like the world was ending. This gloomy despair in my heart.
That is intuition, by the way. What he's feeling right now is his intuition. Something is not right here. Something is not sitting right. There's something getting ready to happen. And the problem is a lot of people don't trust that. They don't listen. They don't heed the warning. Because that is just the universe, God, whatever you believe in. It's just warning you. Something isn't right. Get out, get help, or defend yourself. Fight or flight. Fight, flight, or freeze, right? So in this moment, he's thinking the world just felt like it was going to end. It was really gloomy. I had this feeling, intuition, and they listened to it. They listened to it the first time they listened to it the first time they talked. They listened to it when they went out and bought the guns. They were listening to their intuition that whole time. And this is what's so shitty. We will never know, ever. Unfortunately, the truth will never be revealed whether or not Kitty and Jose would have killed these boys. Do I believe that they would have? Absolutely. To salvage a reputation for Jose? Absolutely. To keep Jose a part of her life? Absolutely. I absolutely believe that they would have done it. But because they didn't get the opportunity to, they're the victims. Isn't that so backwards? They didn't get the opportunity to kill the boys, and because they didn't get that opportunity, the boys killed them in self-defense. It's just, ugh.
Jose Menendez was looking at the possibility of being exposed as a serial child abuser.
They were practically told they signed their own death warrant.
He's not your little brother, he's my son.
You know what's crazy is a lot of the times when people do that, right, they distance themselves from the victim because there's too much guilt or remorse that can be had. I'm back in my Criminal Minds era, guys, because I'm rewatching it, but that's besides the point. A lot of the times, so say you're questioning a husband about the disappearance of his wife, and he keeps saying, my wife. Chris Watts was a great example. When he would talk about the kids, he would never say their names. He would say my girls, my kids, my daughter, or my daughters. He would never say their names because it would personalize it for him. It would be too personal. So my wife, my best friend, my partner, instead of saying her name. And that's what he's doing here, is he's trying to distance himself to an extent, right? Because in this situation, he said, he's not your little brother, he's my son. Almost as if, oh, he's your son? Okay, cool. Then you're right. You can keep doing what you've been doing to him for the last 13 years of his life. What does that have to do with anything? That doesn't make it any better that he's your son.
I was sure that that was it.
Lyle was just staring, and I was beginning to panic. We had made
Also, in the middle of our argument, you're telling him to go upstairs to prepare for you to come in there to abuse him. In front of me? No. No, ma'am.
The thing was colliding at that moment, and my brother said,
this was it, and they were going to kill us.
And all I knew is that if I didn't get to those doors before Mom and Dad got out, that I was going to die.
The impending doom.
It was terrible.
We fired, many, many times.
It's like hell had come to the world, and I just wanted to run away.
Mm. Mm.
And afterwards, I collapsed on the stairs in the foyer.
Mm.
There was another shot fired.
I'm not crying for Jose and Kitty. I'm crying because I couldn't imagine the feeling of impending death, right? Like, it's coming for you. And in that moment, that is all they thought. Whether they saw the guns, whether they heard the guns, whether they heard their parents talking about it, whether they heard rustling behind those doors, all they thought was, we are getting ready to die. We've got to get to them before they can get to us. And then Erik, and the way that they're describing it, just saying, we were just shooting. And Erik collapses because it's so overwhelming. I didn't want to have to do this. I didn't want it to get this bad. I didn't want it to get to this point. Why did it have to get to this point? There are so many thoughts going in his head right then. That is so, so sad. And what's even more annoying to me after hearing this, after hearing what actually happened from Erik and from Lyle, is Monsters just completely screwed this. They didn't come from downstairs. They didn't come from upstairs. They came from the trunk of their car in the middle of the night while their parents were asleep, remember? Come on, man. That's what I mean by that, like, the lies. Like, it causes so much damage.
We waited on the stairs there for the police to come. Minute after minute after minute after minute.
And then at some point, we did get up and we talked about the fact that nobody had come.
Should the police arrive within 2 minutes, they wouldn't, none of the aftermath would have happened. They would have pled guilty in that moment and said, we were in fear for our lives. We didn't know what was going to happen. They've been threatening us. They've been sexually abusing my brother. That wasn't the case. You guys gave them time to come up with the story because they didn't know any better. They're still children. They have not been nurtured the way that they should have been. They're still kids. Boys who just killed their parents, nonetheless.
I couldn't stop myself. When I saw them, I just broke down. It was so wrong. This should have been me.
You know what I hate? I hate that he's racked with so much of this guilt. It should have been me. It was horrible to see. I hate that he's racked with so much of that. Whereas if this was him and his brother, his parents would not be racked with that same guilt. I can't cope with that. Like, that is so hard to fathom. I genuinely believe that Jose and Kitty would not feel the same way. They'd be like, well, good riddance. Guess that's done. We're good. Secret's safe. Let's move along. Let's move it along. Somebody else did this. It's so, so sad.
It was the only place in the world that I could be because I felt like what I had done was I just wanted to undo it.
Despite the abuse, he still felt like that. He's a very beautiful soul.
Someone killed my parents. Pardon me? Were they shot? Yes. They were shot? Yes. Who is the person that was shot? My mom and my dad.
It's like a child. You can hear the child in him. The child in him is saying that. It's like they were severely abused over and over and over again. And they did what most people who would snap, right? Like if this was active, if Lyle walked in on his dad actively sexually abusing his brother and killed his dad, that would have been okay. Most people would be okay with that portion. But this, they did this, and they're so guilt-ridden, and they're so sad, and they're so upset. And he's not acting. He's not acting crying. He's not an actor. That's not what he's doing. That is the child in him, the one that still loved his parents despite everything that they did to him. That's who is crying right now.
Lyle wanted me to go and interview first, because if I broke down and confessed, then he would come in and explain what happened.
Sergeant Edmonds informed me that there was no GSR.
There was no GSR, there was no GSR residue. Like there was no GSR test or there was no GSR residue. Because if there was no GSR test, you're bad at your job. If there was no GSR residue, you're still technically bad at your job. And I'm only saying that because whether it's a hit, every gun is different, but it's like I explained in the Monsters video. If you shoot a shotgun, your non-dominant hand, the one that you don't use to pull the trigger, is where the GSR is going to land. Okay, that's where it'll land, on your hand that is closest to the barrel, essentially. The gunshot residue is just when a gunshot is fired, there are these little particles that fall from the barrel of the gun, from the gun or the bullet coming out of it, and those tend to blow backwards onto a hand, sometimes onto the clothes. If the gun is held in really close proximity, it's usually on the victim. If the gun is in close proximity, like if you shoot somebody or if somebody is shot in the head, the gunshot residue will be on their head. So both ways they're bad at their job. Thank you for coming to my e-talk.
And I turned around to my roommate and I said, "That's the Menendezes," and the kids shot him.
It never crossed my mind that it could have been the boys. As nice, loving, gentle boys.
Again, when everybody is saying, no, it never occurred to me that they would have done something like that. I could never have imagined them doing something like that. People don't just wake up and all of a sudden they're not the person that you thought they were. That's not how that works. That is not how that works. They've never had a history of violence. They've never showed any aggression towards anybody. Why would they just wake up one day and decide today might be a good day to kill our parents? And as far as the boat captain goes, all he had to go on was that one weird interaction with them where they're separated. But I would imagine if the boys would have ended up dead, he would have said the same thing about Jose and Kitty.
When we find out what really happened, we will all be embarrassed to learn it is to do with some bizarre aspect of Jose's personal life.
Technically, it was.
I just remember asking if my parents were dead because I couldn't cope with it. I couldn't face it.
Like, no kidding. He's the only one that I've ever met that I would say, well, gee, what a surprise. It's not a surprise.
How many more people need to say that, do you think? How many more people need to say that before everybody else starts to listen? It's not a surprise because he's a... It's not a surprise, that's all.
Lyle and I did not talk about things as much as I wished we would have, because all I wanted to do was talk about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
How to live with it.
Mm-hmm. He has a conscience.
We learned that they were spending.
One of the ways that Lyle made himself feel better was by spending money. What my mom did, and that's what they did together.
It's what they did together. It was his way of being close to his mom again.
Business wants to pay out the money to the sons so that they could live. I said, we haven't ruled out anybody.
Nightmare on Elm Drive is so annoying to me. Don't disrespect Mr. Craven like that.
And said, "Oh, Roger, I think you're doing such a wonderful job of hiding your emotions." I said, "You mean my glee?" And they said, "Oh, Roger, even you can't joke at a time like this." I said, "I'm not joking."
They hated him.
In the memorial service in Los Angeles, I wasn't able to speak. I began to have dreams of killing myself. And I remember the morning that I woke up after one of those dreams, and my eyes slowly opened, and I realized that I was still alive, and I just wished that I was dead.
That is such a heavy, heavy burden.
Dr. Oziel said flat out that because of what I told him, he can go to the police.
It was a very intense meeting, with me yelling at my brother.
He would feel comfortable in not going to the police if we went into business together.
Do I even need to talk about the trash that is the trash man? Oscar the Grouch trash man? No, Oscar the Grouch is too good for him. I'm sorry, that was disrespectful to Oscar. Because the only way I won't go to the police is if you go into business with me and you have a lot of money and I need money. So this is like really good for the both of us. What? And I do want to touch on this. If you haven't seen the documentary, Lyle does explain this more, because we're just kind of getting Lyle court testimony. We're not getting Lyle actually speaking on this. In the documentary, he says, "I wasn't upset that he told. That's not what I was upset about. I was upset about who he went to. The same man who was willing to tell our father everything against, even though it went against client doctor confidentiality, the same man who tried to, the same man who was willing to lie for our father, was willing to tell our father everything. Like, he was a bad man, and we knew that he was a bad man. And he agreed to my father's terms. That's why I was upset with my brother, because of who he went to, not because he told." And I want to make that very clear right now, that Lyle was not yelling at his brother because he told. He was upset because you told Dr. Oziel, and then it made it worse for them.
A patient is telling you is privileged communication, and he is recording it. Then he has his mistress.
Juju! Juju!
We suspected the brothers might be responsible for the crime. With their reactions after the murder, their spending, and then hearing they purchased the shotguns in San Diego, we had a pretty good case.
This guy, am I right? Oh, brother. Okay. Wow. Okay. That was, for me, that probably was the best thing I've seen to date, barring the documentary, because let me talk to you about intuition really quickly. I believe my intuition. I believe in energy, and your energy will tell me everything that I need to know. So I fully believe them when they say, when they're telling me their events. And this is why too, they are in there for life at this point. At one point, they were facing the death penalty, right? They were already convicted, facing the death penalty. They're in there for life, no possibility of parole. At any point during this entire process, those boys could have said, "Nah, we made it all up. That's not what happened. Let me tell you the real story." Or could have wrote a book like O.J. Simpson did. But they didn't do that. The story has been consistent. Since they told about the sexual abuse, that story has been consistent this entire time. So if anybody is lying, that means that they've been sitting on that lie for 30 years. 30. They have been, nope, this is why we did it for 30 years. This is why we did it for 30 years. At any point in time, they could have, and not lost anything. Not lost anything. They wouldn't have lost anything. They have nothing left to lose by telling the truth now. And if what they've been saying this whole time is the same, that must be the truth, right? That's how that works. So I believe them when they say that. And that's why I say, for me, this is the best thing I've seen to date, because when Erik is telling me the events, I know that this is the truth. This is what happened. And sometimes with the truth, it takes just knowing. I just know. And then when you just know, you'll see that it starts to get corroborated by other people, right? The psychologist, she's sitting here saying they're just boys. Like, it was like the doctor that came in, the people who worked at Jose's company are saying, yeah, I mean, we're kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. The cousins, the aunts, the uncles, everybody's corroborating that this is the truth, that Jose was this person, Kitty was this person. It is being corroborated. So to me, this is the best thing I've seen so far, and I'm only on episode 1. I have 4 more to watch, and I will get to those. You guys will get those pretty soon. Patreon saw it first. Sorry about it. Patreon did see it first. So if you want to check out the full reaction, over on my Patreon, as always. Other than that, guys, this was fun. I'm excited that we did this. Hey. I'll be reacting to new things as they come out. I know Outer Banks comes out literally tomorrow, so we will see how that goes. By tomorrow for you, it's not going to be the same as tomorrow for me, so just so you know. Other than that, guys, thanks for staying. If you stayed the whole time and you loved it, thank you so much. If you stayed the whole time and you hated it, I'm sorry, but thank you. Other than that, be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and above all else, I love you.